Matthew Evans, a wealthy man in his late 70s, sat alone in his silver Mercedes, tapping his thumb impatiently against the steering wheel. The air conditioner hummed softly, barely keeping the Kentucky heat at bay. A retired financier, Matthew was used to life bending to his will, used to convenience, efficiency, and comfort. But on that sweltering afternoon, he found himself stranded with a flat tire, far from the polished serenity of his sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town. After several failed attempts to reach roadside assistance, he sighed in frustration, realizing he'd have no choice but to wait. Just as irritation began to simmer beneath his calm exterior, movement caught his eye, a figure walking steadily down the dusty road toward him. It was a boy, 13, maybe 14, dressed in a faded t-shirt and worn-out sneakers. He walked with quiet determination, his eyes sharp and focused. As he neared the car, he gave Matthew a polite yet confident nod. "Got a flat, sir?" the boy asked, his voice calm and steady. Yes, I do," Matthew replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. "I was hoping to get some help, but there's no signal out here." The boy smiled faintly. "I can help with that," he said, kneeling beside the tire without hesitation. "My grandpa taught me how to change one last summer. Do you have a spare?" Matthew gestured toward the trunk, watching as the boy opened it and began pulling out the tools. The young man worked efficiently, his movement steady and sure, his hand carrying a confidence that felt far beyond his years. As Matthew stood there, the heat forgotten for a moment, a quiet humility began to stir within him, something he hadn't felt in decades. He thought to offer the boy something for his trouble, but the kid hardly looked up, focused completely on the task before him. Within minutes, the job was done. The boy stood, wiping his hands on his jeans before giving a small, satisfied smile. "All done," he said simply. Matthew reached into his wallet and pulled out a few bills, extending them toward the boy. "Hey, take this. I really appreciate your help." But the boy stepped back, raising a hand politely. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything. Just happy to help." For a moment, Matthew just stood there, stunned, the money still dangling between his fingers. He watched as the boy turned and walked back down the road, his figure slowly growing smaller in the rearview mirror. Something about the brief encounter lingered, something he couldn't quite name. With a sigh, he slipped the money back into his wallet and climbed into his car. As he drove away, his thoughts drifted again and again to the boy, his quiet dignity, the calm self-assurance that had nothing to do with wealth or privilege, but something much deeper. That night, sitting alone in his lavish study, Matthew couldn't shake the image from his mind. He sat in his leather armchair, surrounded by shelves of books he rarely opened. The only sound was a rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. His dinner, perfectly cooked steak and asparagus, sat untouched on a nearby table. He thought of all the people he'd met throughout his long career, business partners, investors, employees. Every interaction had always involved a deal, a negotiation, a price. But this boy, this stranger, had helped him without expecting a thing in return. Matthew leaned back, a glass of scotch in hand, and let the memory replay in his mind. The boy's steady hands, the quiet smile, the way he walked away without hesitation or pride. The boy didn't look like he had much, his clothes worn, his shoes scuffed, but he carried himself with an integrity Matthew rarely saw anymore. The next morning, he woke with a restless energy he couldn't explain. He needed to find the boy. Maybe it was gratitude, maybe curiosity, or perhaps something deeper that he didn't want to name. Whatever it was, by mid-morning, he was back behind the wheel, driving the same stretch of rural road, scanning the horizon for a glimpse of the young stranger. Hours passed. He stopped at gas stations, diners, and small stores, asking if anyone had seen a boy matching the description. Most people shook their heads or shrugged, until, finally, in a small roadside cafe, an older woman behind the counter looked up from her wake. "Sounds like you're talking about Elijah," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "That boy's always helping folks around here. Lives with his mama over in Holland." "Holland?" Matthew repeated, committing the name to memory. "Thank you." The town of Holland was about an hour away, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachians. The drive was beautiful, rolling hills, long stretches of green, but Matthew barely noticed. His mind raced with questions. What kind of life did the boy have? What kind of mother raised someone like that? When he arrived, Harlan was quiet, its streets lined with modest houses and family-owned shops. After asking a few locals, he was directed to a small home on the edge of town. The house was simple but tidy, with peeling paint and a front porch that sagged slightly under its own weight. Matthew parked his car and hesitated, unsure of what he'd even say. Taking a steadying breath, he walked up the steps and knocked on the door. It opened a moment later. When the door opened, it revealed a woman in her early 40s. She looked tired, yet kind, her eyes sharp and curious as she studied him for a moment. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Good morning," Matthew replied, clearing his throat. "I'm sorry to trouble you, but I believe I met your son yesterday. Elijah, right? He helped me fix a flat tire." Her expression softened instantly, a small smile touching her lips. "That sounds like my Elijah," she said warmly. "He's always lending a hand to people." "I just wanted to thank him properly," Matthew continued. "He wouldn't take anything from me yesterday." She nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "He's out back. You're welcome to wait." Matthew entered the modest home, taking in his surroundings. The furniture was warm but spotless, the walls decorated with family photographs and a few colorful drawings clearly made by a younger Elijah. It was nothing like his own house, with its polished marble floors and expensive art. Yet something about this place felt cozier, more alive. He followed her out to the backyard, where Elijah was fixing a section of the fence. The boy looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Hey, mister," Elijah said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What are you doing here?" Matthew smiled, suddenly feeling nervous. "I wanted to thank you again. You helped me when I really needed it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it." Elijah shrugged lightly, his tone easy and sincere. It wasn't a big deal. But to Matthew, it was. He was determined to show it. Elijah leaned against the fence, his curious gaze steady. For a moment, neither spoke. The boy's calm confidence made Matthew feel oddly out of place, as though he were the one being examined. "I don't think you realize how big of a deal it was," Matthew said finally, breaking the silence. "People don't usually help strangers without expecting something back." Elijah tilted his head slightly, puzzled by the thought. "I don't see it that way," he said simply. "If someone needs help and I can do it, why wouldn't I?" Matthew was struck by the clarity of the boy's words. His eyes drifted past Elijah, taking in the yard, the uneven grass, the patched fence, the old swing set with rusted chains leaning to one side. It was obvious they didn't have much, but they made the best of what they had. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," Matthew said sincerely. "Your mother must be proud." Elijah grinned, glancing toward the house. "She works hard. I just try to help out where I can." Matthew stood quietly, absorbing the boy's simple truth. Memories stirred. His own childhood in a small, struggling home, his parents' endless efforts to make ends meet, their lessons on perseverance and decency. Somewhere along the way, he had traded those lessons for ambition and wealth. Standing here now, he felt both nostalgia and regret. "I'd like to do something for you and your family," Matthew said at last. Elijah straightened, cautious. "We're fine, mister. We don't need anything." "It's not about need," Matthew said gently. "It's about doing what's right. You helped me. I'd like to return that kindness." Before Elijah could reply, his mother called from the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Elijah, you better come in and wash up before lunch," she said. Then she turned to Matthew. "Would you care to join us? It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome." Matthew hesitated. He wasn't used to such invitations, especially not one so sincere. "I'd like that," he said finally, following her inside. The kitchen smelled of freshly baked bread and roasted vegetables. The table was small, surrounded by mismatched chairs, but it was neatly set. Matthew sat down, feeling oddly out of place in his tailored suit amid such humble warmth. Elijah washed his hands at the sink and joined them, his easy smile never fading. As they ate, conversation flowed naturally. Elijah talked about school, his friends, and his dream of becoming an engineer. His mother spoke of their community, her pride clear as she described neighbors who looked out for one another. Matthew listened, feeling a quiet warmth he hadn't felt in years. For all his success and wealth, his grand mansion felt cold compared to this little house, alive with laughter, love, and gratitude. After lunch, as they cleared the dishes, Matthew turned to Elijah's mother. "You've done a wonderful job raising him," he said honestly. "He's got more heart than most people I know." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Thank you. He's a good boy. We've had our hard times, but we've learned to be thankful for the small things." Matthew nodded, thoughts racing. He didn't want to intrude, but he also couldn't walk away without giving something back. This family had given him something precious, a reminder of what truly mattered. When he left their home that afternoon, he felt lighter, clearer than he had in years. Driving back toward his estate, ideas began to form. This wasn't about charity. It was about honoring decency, the kind of goodness that asked for nothing in return. Elijah and his mother deserved more than patched fences and worn furniture. They deserved stability, dignity, and a chance at better days. The next morning, Matthew began making phone calls, many of them. He reached out to old business partners, friends, and associates. Something had shifted in him, and he intended to make it count. By midday, after countless calls to contractors and suppliers, Matthew had a plan in motion. Within a week, trucks and workers began arriving at Elijah's home. Matthew stood on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, overseeing the activity as Elijah and his mother watched in disbelief. "You didn't have to do this," Elijah's mother said, her voice trembling as she took in the sight of workers unloading materials. "We've managed fine on our own." Matthew turned to her, his expression sincere. "You've done more than manage. You've thrived. But you and your son gave me something I didn't even realize I was missing. Please, let me give something back." Elijah stood quietly beside his mother, his usual easy grin replaced by a thoughtful gaze. Matthew crouched slightly so he could meet the boy's eyes. "You taught me something, Elijah," he said gently. "Helping people isn't about money. It's about being there. I just want to show up for you, the way you did for me." Over the following weeks, the little house underwent a stunning transformation. The sagging porch was rebuilt with sturdy new wood. The roof was repaired, and the old rusted swing set in the backyard was replaced with a brand new one. Inside, the walls were freshly painted, the floors polished, and the kitchen fitted with modern appliances that gleamed under the light. At first, Elijah insisted on helping, carrying planks, sweeping up sawdust, but Matthew smiled and waved him off. "Your job," he said with a grin, "is to enjoy being a kid for once." Still, Elijah couldn't resist sneaking outside to watch the workers. His eyes sparkled with fascination as he observed the measure, cut, and build. One of the crew members, a broad-shouldered man named Joe, noticed the boy's curiosity and invited him to help measure wood. Before long, Elijah was asking questions about tools, blueprints, and construction techniques. His enthusiasm was contagious. From a distance, Matthew watched it all, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered, something beyond wealth or reputation. The boy's energy reminded him of the ambition he once had before life became consumed by numbers, meetings, and stock portfolios. One golden evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the yard in warm light, the project neared completion. Elijah and his mother stood on the new porch, marveling at the transformation. "This isn't just a house anymore," Elijah's mother said softly, emotion catching in her throat. "It's a home. I don't know how we can ever thank you." Matthew shook his head, his tone gentle. "You already have. You reminded me what life's supposed to be about: family, connection, purpose. I think I'm the one who should be thanking you." The final day of renovations felt like a celebration. Neighbors wandered over to admire the changes, bringing small gifts, fresh-baked bread, jars of jam, even a potted plant. Elijah's laughter echoed through the yard as he raced around with his friends, showing off the new swing set in freshly painted rooms. Inside, the once tired house now radiated warmth and light. Matthew leaned against the porch railing, watching the scene unfold with a smile that felt effortless, unforced. It had been a long time since he'd known this kind of joy, simple, pure joy that came from seeing others happy. Elijah's mother approached, a cup of iced tea in her hand. She offered it to him with a kind smile. "You've done more than fix a house," she said softly. "You've given us hope. And maybe, I think you found something for yourself, too." Matthew nodded, taking a slow sip. "I have," he admitted quietly. "I spent so many years chasing things I thought mattered. Money, success, influence. But none of it feels like this. Nothing ever did." As the sun set behind the hills, Elijah joined them on the porch, his energy still bright and boundless. He looked up at Matthew, thoughtful. "Mr. Matthew," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about what you did for us. I want to do something like that someday. I want to help people too." Matthew placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice steady. "You already are, Elijah. Your kindness started all of this. Don't ever lose that." The three of them sat together, watching the sky fade from gold to amber to deep orange. The warmth of the evening lingered, but beneath it was something deeper: connection, gratitude, and a shared sense of purpose. When it came time for Matthew to leave, Elijah and his mother walked him to his car. The boy's wide smile and his mother's tearful expression were etched in Matthew's memory as he drove away. This wasn't the end. He realized it was only the beginning of a new chapter for all of them. In the weeks that followed, more changes came. Elijah's newfound interest in building blossomed into a true passion. Matthew arranged for him to spend time with the same construction crew, learning the trade hands-on. Elijah soaked up every detail, eager and determined. Matthew, in turn, found himself returning to Holland again and again. Each visit felt less like a trip and more like coming home. He no longer felt like an outsider in their lives. He was part of something real, something that finally made sense. And in that quiet little town with a big heart, the story came full circle. One boy's simple act of kindness had reminded an old man of life's greatest truth, that it's never about what you have, but what you give.